taken your 10th pick and drafted someone for the defensive line. I would have rather gotten one player and then known what they were going to do in the draft and say they're going to take the best defensive tackle or edge rusher that's available, and that's what the plan is. I would have been fine with that.
I didn't just come out yesterday and say, I'm going to give the Bears a grade. It's going to be an A. I think it was actually a web poll question that Silvy had asked. Mm-hmm. And I gave them an A for the offseason, not as a result of just the guys that they signed or traded for, but the offseason. And for me, that included Ben Johnson and his staff.
Yeah, I think you can include that, but obviously you have to have players to execute what you need them to execute. And so going out and making the trades for Jackson, for Tooney, for making those moves, okay, you got ahead of what we're finding out is an insanely expensive guard market right now. So good on you for getting out ahead of that. I like the Dahlman signing. I said for as long as we've been talking about a center, it's the most we've ever talked about a center on the radio since Olin was around playing for the Bears.
Well, and it's such an important position, especially when you've invested the first overall pick on a quarterback the year before.
Yeah, and I think there was a point yesterday, I know Tyler and Meller were on the air, it was like 11:15 when the news broke. I was like, why is this taking so long? This should have been 11:01. We should have gotten the alert that they were signing Drew Dahlman. So I was worried that it was taking too long, even though it only took 15 minutes. I like those signings. I'm not the biggest fan of what they did on the defensive line yesterday.
I've talked myself into that perspective over the course of the last 12 hours as well, but go ahead.
I think that giving Dayo Odeyingbo $48 million, 3 years with $32 million guaranteed, and Grady Jarrett, who is 30-plus years old.
32 when the season began.
Has gotten progressively worse. He was, I can just go, he had a career low Pro Football Focus rating last year. He was 125th in the league in pressure rate last season, which only 5.6 pressure, 125th in the NFL. And you gave him $43 million with $28.5 million guaranteed. I know you got two players, but for the price of one and a draft pick probably,
which is a steep price.
Which is fine. You could have gone out and gotten Trey Hendrickson. You could have given Jonathan Allen $12 more million. I mean, he got $60 million. We don't know what the guaranteed money is, but you could have given him $12 more million that you gave Odeyingbo $48 million and gotten Jonathan Allen.
Instead of Grady Jarrett.
Instead of either of them. So to me, there were moves that now you're seeing the money because yesterday when these moves came out, you're like, okay, that's fine. That's decent money. It's average value. The projected contract for Odeyingbo was 4 years, $70 million with 42 guaranteed. So it's less than what was projected by whoever projects those, the experts that project contracts. And so looking at the other moves that have now gone around with the NFL, with the Vikings signing Allen and Hendrickson still not being traded yet, I kind of would have rather made those moves than these. And then taken your 10th pick and drafted someone for the defensive line. I would have rather gotten one player and then known what they were going to do in the draft and say they're going to take the best defensive tackle or edge rusher that's available, and that's what the plan is. I would have been fine with that. And instead, you've got guys that are...
So you got decreasingly excited as the day went on and the defensive names were announced.
Yeah, I did. Well... Odeyingbo's a guy that needs to prove it, that could be developed, that maybe Dennis Allen gets something out of him and he ends up being a good player. The Grady Jarrett one is the one where you're giving out $28 million. I mean, on ESPN, Seth Walder gave it a D just because of how old he is and did your mic just break?
Something came loose, but we're still good. We're still good.
They gave him a D because of all of the stats I gave you and the guaranteed money over 3 years when there were better options out there on the market.
Yeah, well, I look at that deal, and Grady Jarrett obviously, is beloved in Atlanta. As a former Walter Payton Man of the Year, I believe. I don't know if he won the award, but certainly was one of their representatives for it. Had ACL surgery in 2023. Came back from it, obviously. He's going to be 32 during this upcoming season. He's had 4 total sacks in the last 2 years. You mentioned the pressure rates, and you gave him $28.5 million guaranteed. I would say pretty much to be a rotational run stuffer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that they put more value on that signing because he is a true pro. You needed an adult in that room. The leadership is going to be important in there as well. but how much is that worth to you would be the question I would ask. It does seem to be a bit of a rich contract for a guy. I mean, if you spread it out over the 3 years, right? It's 3 years and $28.5 million guaranteed. I know it's 3 for whatever, but let's look at the guarantees.
Yeah. For
$9 million a year for a rotational run stuffer who's going to give you tremendous leadership. It seems to be a bit stiff, price-wise. I will also say the Dengbo signing, the more you look at it, is I'm going to ride with Dennis Allen on this. The same way I'm willing to ride with Ben Johnson on some of the things that they've done on the other side.
Yes.
I think Dennis Allen's got a tremendous defensive resume. This is the type of player that he likes. Kid's 6'6" and 290. You can kick him inside. He can play some DT, some 3 technique. He's also a guy that is rangy, can come from the outside. He's got 16 and a half career sacks in 4 years. Is his best football ahead? My answer to that is I hope so, but you're giving him $32 million guaranteed on the if come, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the way to describe it?
Yeah, and ideally, Dennis Allen can develop him and turn him into a player. You also have, Booker, who you need to develop as well, and hopefully he turns into a player as well. So, yeah, you added. You added what people wanted you to add. We've been talking about offensive and defensive line ad nauseum since the season, even before the season ended, when they couldn't stop anybody running the football, and when Caleb Williams was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. So you've done more on the offensive line, I think, than you have with the defensive line. I still don't know what they're going to do in the draft. I think that this kind of opens them up to doing anything they want to, and that's kind of where the Ashton Genty conversation comes in again. And now his odds to be drafted by the Bears are the lowest they've ever been. They're plus 140. The next highest are the Raiders at plus 200. That's their Field Yates, who joined Carmen and Dion earlier, had the tight end.
Warren from Penn State.
Tyler Warren from Penn State. So
another luxury pick from my perspective at this point. If I was asking you to give me a letter grade, you don't have to. You can do what Carmen says. I'm not giving you. You'll get nothing and like it from me. But if I asked you to give them a letter grade for their offseason to this point, and there's plenty of work still to be done, obviously. There's free agency that will continue, and obviously the draft. Where would you go?
Well, okay. I'm going to cop out here a little bit.
No. There's no copping out.
I'm going to cop out a little bit.
There's no copping out. It's an off-season grade.
I'm going to cop out a little bit. The season is built on trimesters, okay? DePaul was on trimesters when I went to DePaul for a trimester and a half, and so before I dropped out. DePaul's on trimester. They don't do quarters. The first trimester is coach, A. Second trimester is the free agency period.
This is a BS way to get to the end. To the
B minus.
Put them together. It's a project. It's
B minus, and then now the next one is going to be the draft.
Okay,
so if you want to average them together, I'll give you a B plus.
Oh, stop!
I'll give you a B
this
plus.
is a version of what Carm was saying. You're going to get nothing from me and like it. Just give me a damn grade.
He didn't give you anything. I'm giving you B plus. B plus.
To this point for the offseason.
Yes, to this point, I'm giving you a B plus.
Meller, I think Tyler was a B yesterday, weren't you?
Yeah, B.
Yeah. How are you willing to stay there?
Yeah.
Or have you had any thoughts?
No, I think the way that I look at it is the approach they've taken, I think, is an A. But in terms of the result and what you've recouped this offseason is probably a B.
Okay.
Listen, I'll go ahead and be the easy grader. I'll be the teacher that everybody wants to sign up for their course because you're getting an A. I haven't traditionally been that person.
You had them winning 13 games last year.
Last 2 off seasons, though, I will admit that I don't know, maybe I've lost my mind. I think this is a continuation, though, a little bit of last year, what I was looking at as they were putting together what Carm laid out, the A grades that they were getting last year for, putting this incubator around Caleb Williams where everyone believed that he could flourish. The approach, Drew Dahlman, the trade for Tooney and Jackson, and again, this is a lot of faith in Ben Johnson, and I will admit that.
But Ben Johnson is a huge part, at least for me, of the evaluation process when I'm handing out an offseason grade that is still incomplete, but to this point.
And this is where, and I get what you're saying, Abdalla, with Jonathan Allen. he's a bigger name. I also think, though, that just paying
Jonathan
him,
Allen's a better player than Grady Jarrett right now. Would you not confirm?
I think so. But it's not like Grady Jarrett is somebody who hasn't been productive. Last year he played. It was his first year back from a significant knee injury. Generally, you're not going to necessarily get better. But it's not like he was somebody who was awful last year.
Nobody said there's a wide
Jonathan Allen's
swath
30. It's
between awful and $28.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a gap there that you could drive a truck through.
I just like
Nobody's saying awful.
Going to, I would challenge any caller up here who listens to tell us
It's a challenge.
to tell us that they're breaking down line play and they can tell you the difference between what Jonathan Allen did last year and what Grady Jarrett did last year.
Okay, Jonathan
and I would
Allen.
say everybody at the station is going off of what they've read, but not actually seen personally.
Jonathan Allen missed a ton of time last year because he tore a pec. They thought he was going to be out the entire year. He did come back for the postseason. I think he actually played pretty well in the postseason. But the body of work now, the age, I think, works in Allen's favor versus Jarrett. And the question is the difference between an all-pro and the 53rd guy on your roster? Nobody's suggesting that. But much in the way, Jeff, you and I saw the running back position in the same manner. If you're going to swim in that end of the pool, why wouldn't you spend a little extra money on a guy that is younger and better?
What if I told you guys real quick that the guaranteed money for Jonathan Allen at signing is $23.2 million, with another $8 million becoming guaranteed if he's on the roster in 2026.
So it's basically
$31 million.
Then I would have said I would rather have had Jonathan Allen.
That's
but again,
$3 more million.
It's not in a vacuum here. You don't know that they could have landed Jonathan Allen. Kevin O'Connell had a relationship with Jonathan Allen from his time in Washington when he was an OC there. It's not as simple as just, I agree with you. On the surface, I would rather have Jonathan Allen. But I think they're similar players. Grady Jarrett will be 32 this year. Jonathan Allen's going to be 30. It's not like there's a world of difference between who they are as players. And by the way, Grady Jarrett has been to 2 Pro Bowls in his career. You know what I'm saying? So I think when people...
Has Jonathan Allen been to any Pro Bowls?
He's been to 2 Pro Bowls. They've both been to 2 Pro Bowls.
Okay.
I still think you're more getting a player in Jonathan Allen that can be productive, whereas what we've seen from Jarrett is that he's just consistently getting worse and worse.
The decline has started, which happens with defensive linemen.
And Allen might be declining now. This might be the start of his decline at 30. But I know that he's going to be at least more productive than a guy that's getting progressively worse. And you're right, Mellor, that he might not have wanted to come to the Bears. Who knows?